In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the campus of America. Tonight, our special guest is Mr. Jordan L. Costen. Jordan is a licensed psychotherapist, nationally recognized speaker, and founder of Safe Space Nova, a nonprofit dedicated to uplifting LGBTQ plus youth with advanced certifications in clinical anxiety, CCATP, trauma, CCTP, and sex and couples therapy, CSTIP. Jordan offers a trauma informed, cultural responsive approach that centers compassion, authenticity, and empowerment. Before entering the mental health field, Jordan built a successful career in IT, yet felt a deeper calling to create safe spaces for those navigating trauma, identity, and systemic barriers. His transition from tech to therapy reflects a powerful commitment to purpose over prestige. Jordan holds degrees from Howard University, American University, and the Catholic University of America, and has presented nationally on topics including LGBTQ plus inclusion, youth mental health, and resilience. His work bridges clinical expertise with lived experience, making him a trusted voice in both therapeutic and advocacy circles. As a board chair of Safe Space Nova and a member of the One Fairfax Community Roundtable, Jordan continues to shape local equity efforts, amplify underrepresented voices, and redefine what healing looks like for marginalized communities. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan Cohen. How you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing quite well. I'm doing quite well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I'm trying to get this down. I had that echo going on. uh, is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get into the show?
No, well, you know what? I will say this. I mean, it's a pretty extensive resume just because of the work that I've done, and that's what comes along with doing and being in these types of positions. But ultimately, I like to help. That's the very simplistic way that I refer to the work that I do. I'm trying to help vulnerable populations and different members of community. So that's how I see myself and my place in the world, in the work that I do today.
Oh wow, that's excellent. Let's start first with jumping into your purpose and pivot. Can you tell us what inspired your transition from IT to mental health?
Sure. So, just to take everybody back to kind of the beginning of where my journey kind of began and what led down this, I was in college. And when I was in college, about my junior year, there was a flyer posted and it asked for volunteers to tutor at a local high school. Now, the way that I was raised was under this guiding principle of to whom much is given, much is expected. And I volunteered when I was in high school, thanks to the values instilled in me from my family. So when I saw this flyer, I jumped at the opportunity because outside of school, I had ample time to do that. So there I was, maybe within a week or so, starting this tutoring with this student. And I went all the way through the end of the school year into their graduation. Once that completed, I went from there to another organization in the Washington, D.C. area where I continued in a mentoring slash tutoring role. And I did that for a couple of iterations with different organizations. I took a break when I went to grad school, and then coming out on the other side, I said, how can I make a bigger impact? Which led me thinking about my community, the LGBTQ community, and how I know what it was like not to have community as a youth and how vulnerable of a population they were. So I wanted to volunteer my time essentially with an organization where I said, let me help members of my community and people, of course, that look like me. And unfortunately, what I found was in the area in which I live, it did not exist as progressive as that area or geographic location is. So I did what I called the overly ambitious thing, which was say, what does it look like to create a space like this? And that would be creating a nonprofit. And I started just doing research, and I had my tablet. On my tablet, I created a PowerPoint presentation, and that was the beginnings of what this nonprofit would look like in terms of the mission, the values, the programs. And for 2 years, whenever I had some spare time, I would refer to this PowerPoint, make adjustments after reading and getting some advice from others. And eventually I decided I would found the organization, Safe Space Nova, which you spoke about in the intro of my bio. And we are coming up on 10 years, by the way. March 29th, 2026 will be our 10-year anniversary. But that is what spearheaded me towards this social work and therapy work. I did that, and I was still in the IT space by day. And then whenever I was not doing my job, I was the executive director of Safe Space Nova. Have an amazing community of friends. So they stepped in and took on roles to help me with the organization. I kept doing that for some years. And what I realized is that my level of fulfillment and enjoyment when it came to my day job was dwindling. It was important to me, given how much time you spend in a work environment, that I was doing something that gives back. And working in corporate America, you're giving back to the bottom line, but not so much for the betterment of humanity. So I decided to shift my focus, which said, okay, I'm doing this social work type job as executive director of this nonprofit. What would it take for me to formalize this into a career? Did require me to go back to school, which I did. Came out of school in 2021 with my master's in clinical social work, and I've been off to the races ever since. So became a social worker, and shortly thereafter did the work that needed to be done in terms of hours and residency to then become a full-fledged therapist, which led me to where I am today.
So when you mentioned the things such as when you were talking about you was coming up and there was no community, you know, well, I mean there was, but there was, it wasn't a space where you fit in. What were some of the things that you were going through during that phase that had you yearning so for community that you felt like you had to create your own space?
It's feeling isolated and feeling alone. Like people don't understand what you're experiencing. So I was the subject of bullying and ridicule because I was not considered to be masculine or overtly masculine. To some, that meant that you're either weird, different, or you're just gay. And people would seek you out. They would see you as weaker in a sense and say, I want to go and deal with this person and say things about them or even possibly inflict physical harm because they are viewed as weaker from a societal standpoint and how LGBTQ or gay men are portrayed in society. So that was just detrimental. My mental health, I didn't have this language when I was, of course, a teenager when I was experiencing these things. But now that I do, and of course I sit in this role, I experienced a lot of depression and anxiety as a result. There were times that I would self-isolate. So I would come home, I would go in my room, I would close the door, I would turn off all the lights, and I would just force myself to try to go to sleep or just sit there in the darkness. So something that wasn't prominent in terms of wanting to let my family know, but I was just very much struggling from a mental health standpoint and did for some years until I got to a better, more affirming environment.
Oh wow, that is definitely traumatic. How did your personal journey shape your decision to become a therapist?
So when I was in college was the first time I decided I would try therapy on my own, or just in general. I'd never done therapy. I had not mentioned my mental health struggles directly with my family. I put on a facade for as many years as I could because this is related to being LGBTQ, which was at the time considered not to be accepted from a perception standpoint. So in college, I met with a therapist, and that helped me. It helped shape me to get to a better place mentally. So I did that, and I've honestly been pretty consistent with therapy since that point. So I was about maybe 18 or 19 years old, and all the way through college, through my 20s, into my 30s. So I know the impact that therapy has, that ability to sit there and have somebody else help you work through what is the trauma of your past. So it was truly significant. And when I thought about it, yes, I can be a social worker, but the beauty of our field is that you can go and get the formal education. And then if you so choose, you can then become a therapist. So to me, that was just such an amazing gift to give to my community, because there are not a lot of people that look like me that sit in this position. One, identifying as LGBTQ, two, just being male, and then third, being African American. What most people don't know is that males who are just African American, not necessarily counting LGBTQ, but African American males only make up 2% of the therapist population.
Oh wow. Oh wow. So then that means that in getting in that field, I mean, one, not only are you a very, very small minority, but it's like you really got to make inroads in order to make the impact and the difference that you're trying to make.
Yeah, I did. The beauty of the work that I had done at Safe Space Nova. So I started grad school to become a therapist and social worker in fall 2018. And I had done the work at Safe Space Nova at that point for a few years. So I had essentially a base. I had community partners and people knew me in the community. So when I transitioned and said, I'm leaving IT account management because everybody knew that was my day job. When I said, I'm going to make this transition and said, I'm going to do social work. Well, the first thing people will say is, this makes sense. We get it. Knowing your personality, the way you like giving to the community, you leaving that job and coming over to this space completely makes sense. We get you. And then once I was done and I transitioned into therapy, it's, we know people that need your help because you are part of our community now. And we have referrals, we have people we want to send your way. So it was actually a pretty smooth transition, just given my background in the nonprofit space.
So, what was the moment you knew you had to create Safe Space Nova?
The moment I knew is when I looked for an organization that I could volunteer my time, and I could not find it in an area and or geographic location that I lived in that claimed to be very liberal. So if you're liberal, okay, here's a vulnerable population. And this is a fact worth noting. LGBTQ youth are 3 to 5 times more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. So an organization like Safe Space Nova existing helps those kids, those youth, those teens feel like they don't have to go down that route. They don't experience those symptoms as much. I knew that after just doing, my own experience and also doing other research. So to know it didn't exist in an area that's as vast as where I live, which is in the Northern Virginia area, again, just very liberal in terms of how it lands, was astonishing to me. And I also don't back down from a challenge. I was raised by an impeccable Black woman and Black family, and the only person that can limit you is you. So regardless of what my educational experience was at the time, regardless of what my professional experience was, I was by no means willing to accept that I saw something that was missing or a gap in society, and I was not willing to do everything within my power to fill it.
Mm. So, what challenges did you face launching a nonprofit focused on LGBTQ plus youth?
Very simply, knowledge. At that point, so again, March 29, 2016 is when we officially founded. Background, I'd only worked from the time I graduated college, all the way up until that point in IT account management. Very technical, analytical role with customer relations part of it. So that was my professional experience. My educational experience up to that point was in communications. I have a bachelor's in television production, and I have a master's in public relations. So if you're talking about nonprofit, The most I had done at that point was volunteer. I was not familiar at all with the operations and how this works. So it's becoming familiar with it. Now, again, it's about I don't back down from a challenge. And if I can fill a gap, I will. So after incorporating, I said, how do I make sure? And a mantra that I tend to live by is I don't need to be the smartest person in the room, but I need to have enough information so I can have an intelligent conversation. So very short order after we were incorporated, say Space Nova as an organization, I then started taking night classes at a local junior college because they had a certification for a newly released program, which was a nonprofit management and administration. So it was a certification in that area. So I took those classes for 8 months just so I could build up my knowledge about how to write an effective mission statement and build a board and how to fundraise. So I gathered as much information as I could from that program and my professors to make sure that we were going to build what was a sustainable nonprofit organization.
So, how do you define safe space in today's climate?
Essential would be the key word. In our social political climate, we've unfortunately fallen back to a place of being demonized. If you take any letter of LGBTQ as being demonized, I mean, we're literally part of a society now questioning whether it's legitimate for people that identify as I do to remain married. Although we've been married and we were given that about 10 years ago, it's a question from the highest levels of government, including the Supreme Court, of whether that's something that should happen. We're still being demonized in professional places and other areas as well. So having this is essential because if we think about the youth, they're seeing this. Oh, this is what I have to look forward to if I am a teenager, if I'm in middle school. This is what I have to look forward to as soon as I graduate and become part of the adult world. So having this space is pretty essential to say, no, there are people that look like you, that identify as you, that have gone through similar experiences, and we're still here. We're here, we're fighting, and we are proud in terms of who we are, and we are living authentically as ourselves.
I think that's the thing that's most important because, through all that scrutiny, a lot of people don't have the strength or the wherewithal to keep pushing forward with being who they are. And so, like in situations like that, and I know you said you came from a strong family background with your mother and you take on challenges. But other than that, what was within you that continued your strength and gave you more strength to keep pushing to do what you do right now?
So when I was 14, I myself made an attempt on my life. So I did not feel like I could continue to move forward. So I made an attempt at 14, unbeknownst to anybody in the household or my family at the time. It was something I did. And I woke up the next day. I won't go into detail because that's not necessary about what that attempt looked like. But I can tell you that I woke up on the other side with this feeling of there must be a purpose. So that's always in the back of my head. I was spared, but there must be a reason behind that. And I'm going to continue to follow through. And this is just another way to approach this idea of this nonprofit space and the work that I'm doing is I was spared and it could be for this. I can't say with certainty, obviously, because I'm not all knowing and all powerful, but I can say that it's an intentional act that needs to happen in terms of forming an organization because of those that will help as well as protect. And I'm just operating on this whole, I was spared for a purpose. And maybe this is just another reason why.
Mm. Let's transition over to your work in therapy and transformation. What does trauma-informed care mean in practice?
Being able to take what are the worst aspects of a person's being in existence and helping them process through it so that they become empowered on the other side of this. People do not feel, once they've gone through and lived through traumatic experiences, whether it's one or it's repetitive trauma, that they can really conquer that or get to a better place. It owns them. And what we're talking about here when we're doing trauma-informed care is you're going to own it. It's not going to own you.
Mm. So with trauma-informed care, because I know that there's different types of trauma that people can experience, but I think they're all basically bogged down on the mental, on the mental in general. Uh, when we talk about this particular part of trauma informed, and you say how you have to learn to identify. Um, what are some of the key elements that you look for that you help these people to understand how to get there?
We're going to start with the very basics here. Very, very big basic is building, we call it from a clinical standpoint, it's called a therapeutic rapport. Very simply, it is about trust. A person is not going to be willing to talk to you about something that impacted them so significantly without there being trust. So we spend a considerable amount of time building that trust. When I say we, me as a therapist, gaining a client's trust so they're willing and able to talk about what is difficult. From there, we started a very slow pace, and we're not the dictators here. As I often tell my clients once they start working with me, I'm the guide in the situation, but I go at the pace in which you said. So it's when you're ready, when you feel comfortable, we're going to start unpacking it. We're just going to start talking about what it is. And the way to think about that, that's easier on the client in the initial phases of talking about it, is we all know what it's like to go to the movies. So instead of being in the movie, which means that you're emotionally impacted when talking about it, imagine that you are watching the movie. So you're telling it third person. Wow, this happened to this person. And we're going to start there. And then slowly but surely, as we get more of the story or we get to the other side of it, well, let's talk about the emotions. Let's talk about emotions that are a part of what this story is. Now, weave into that are going to be tools. And that's a real key component of the work that we're doing together. People often think of the work with a therapist as you're sitting on the sofa and you're just talking about things, talk therapy, and that's what you're leaving with, is just having this conversation and getting it all out. That's not the work that we do, at least not me. I by no means want to speak for any other therapist, but they're going to be tools that are going to be weaved throughout these conversations and these sessions. And as we go through it and we do the processing and use of these individual tools that are selected based off of the trauma and the person. So at the end of this process, it's I've been able to talk through it, I've been able to process it, and I now have tools that help me with emotional dysregulation, which happens with trauma. This again is not something that's owning me, I own it.
Right. Oh wow, that's cool. Um, how do your certifications in anxiety, trauma, and couple therapy inform your approach?
They give me the tools. No different than a doctor or a lawyer. We go through a lot of formal education, and if I must be blatantly honest, they give you everything in the kitchen sink included, because you're dealing with all types of clients. Just like you'll see all types of patients as a medical doctor initially, or at least that's what they want to give you, the foundations of education when you go to med school. It's no different in our field. But as therapists, we tend to have a specialty. Specialty for me is anxiety, it is depression, and suicidal ideation. So I wanted specialized training around those specific areas. So that's how or why I went and got those certifications. We add in the sex therapy informed professional certifications, pretty long and lengthy, but I see couples as well as my work with individuals, and it's making sure that I have the knowledge. We're talking about intimacy and what that looks like, and we can have a broader conversation, because we're not going to call a relationship healthy unless we can talk about the intimate moments or lack thereof. And again, this is just a certification that provides me with the language and the tools, if you will, to help my clients get to a better place when it comes to their marriages and or relationships.
What's one breakthrough moment you've had with a client?
So when I hear a client, it often makes me chuckle. So forgive me, it's just like, this is what happens when a client says to me, hey, I was doing this thing and I found myself starting to go one direction, which is what we talked about. And forgive me, I'm talking more in broad terms, because my work and with clients HIPAA protected, but I'm used to reacting in this type of way. But Jordan, I heard your voice and what we talked about and the tool that I am to use, and I was able to do something different. So maybe I started and I did, if you think of it like I'm walking with my feet one and two, one and two. I walked one, two, realized that I was starting to experience this the same way I had. And it was like, nope, I hear Jordan's voice. I remember the tool that we talked about to help me address this, and I'm actually able to move in an entirely different direction. That's a breakthrough moment right there. A lot of my clients will sit and we will talk. We'll spend a good amount of time talking about how they've gotten to a better place and how this has helped them. So those moments where they actually say, Jordan, I hear your voice in my head, which is the indicator of it, the very least, they're taking in what is being said in terms of the tools, and they're able to recall it when they need it the most.
So, how do you tailor therapy for the LGBTQ plus youth navigating identity and trauma?
Mm. We so definitely have some youth who are in the trying to figure out what their identity is. They just know it's part of the LGBTQ community. And the way I often describe it is, if we think from an imagery standpoint, if you go to a mall and you see a shirt and it looks good on the rack or it looks good on the mannequin, but you don't know if it looks good on you. So it's a question of, let me go try it on. Let me go into the dressing room and try on this shirt, this belt, this dress, this blouse, these pair of shoes, pants. Let's try them on. Let's try different ones on and see what fits. That's how we address identity. It's not a this has to fit, it's what feels like it works for you at the very least. And sometimes it's, what, there's nothing on the rack, and that's absolutely okay as well. We have a term for that. It's called queer, or you could just say, I don't have a term. I just know that I'm broadly part of the community in some type of way. So let's try what works for you, and we just navigate it from that lens.
Oh, wow. What role does cultural responsiveness play in your sessions?
Have to understand a person's background as best you can, because it informs how they think, it informs their belief system, it informs how they show up, it even informs how they respond to trauma, anxiety, depression, again, and suicidal ideation. So a person's culture is part of who they are and their background. And if I'm not aware of what that is, I'm doing a disservice to them as their mental health provider. Now, as I sit here as a self-identifying Black and African-American male, that does not mean I know and am intimately familiar with every single cultural experience. What it does mean is that I will get and gain the information that I need to so I can perform meaningful care for my clients. So I see people from all different types of cultures, and I will do and gain the knowledge I need to make sure that I understand the place in which they're coming from, again, from a contextual and background standpoint. It's really important in the work that we do.
Let me ask you this, with your clients, do you find consistent patterns with when they identify culturally as either Black youth, white youth, uh, Black men, white women, Black women? Do you find consistencies in how the therapy plays out with them? In other words, is it like something that's one and the same that you can easily put your finger on, or is it something that's totally different? And is all relevant to the actual culture?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Charles, for asking that. And to clarify, I see individuals as unique in the work that I do. With the example being, you can be a Black man who is 19 years old. There can be two Black men who come in and say they're 19 years old, but one can be from the South, so below the Mason-Dixon line. One can be from California or New York. A very big difference is the liberalness, if you will, of those areas. So there's going to be a lot more of resources available to those who've been raised in places that are like a California, Los Angeles, or San Francisco, and New York than there are traditionally in the South. A family structure that one has or identifies with can be very different. So one could be from a single mother household, which colors their view of the world, versus another could be from a two-parent household. One could even be raised by their grandparents for whatever the reason may have been behind that. So that colors a person's view. We do this assessment. Again, the clinical term here is called a biopsychosocial assessment. And we are analyzing as best we can all aspects of your life, because you are an individual. While you may have similarities because of your identity, because of your race, because of your age, because of your geographic location, there's still going to be a significant amount of differences, especially when it comes to the culmination of those. So we want to make sure that we're taking note of those in the work that we do.
So how do you help clients reclaim their narrative?
We have to find what their narrative is first, because a lot of clients don't tend to want to talk about that first, if we're being honest. I want to talk about the good. Some, of course, want to kind of come right in here and start working on the difficult parts, but a lot of them don't understand what their narrative is, or even how to find their voice. So it's getting them to the point where they're trustful enough, and then they feel empowered to say, okay, this is what I understand it to be. Okay. And then where do they use that surround this narrative that exists? Because the narrative isn't inherently positive. It's, let's define what your narrative is. It's going to take us some time and some work to get there. Again, we're reverting to, we have to build that trust where a client feels confident to do so and share that information, and then feels empowered as well. And once we find that, it's okay, what's the work we need to do in terms of that narrative and how we shift it so that you feel more empowered? So an example could be, I've grown up as a Black male in a predominantly white society, and I feel like I have to fight all the time. I always feel like I have to work 2 to 3 times as hard. I have to stay at work and work excessively in comparison to my counterparts. And it's okay if that's your narrative. We want to get to the point where you're taking true ownership about that. You can be vocal about that. And then say, how do we start to shift that narrative so it does not negatively or adversely impact you emotionally? Because if you're working a day, 10 plus hours, 12 plus hours, there's a toll that that takes on you. So that was just an example, but yeah.
Mm. So, what's your philosophy on healing and authenticity?
Healing changes with every single person and what it looks like. There is no healing. And to clarify, I've done this for almost 5 years now in terms of sitting the therapist chair. Healing looks different for every person. And what I find almost comical, if I'm being really transparent and honest in the moment, is that we as individuals outside of somebody's healing want to dictate what that looks like. My job, I can't even tell you if I can attempt to, but it doesn't do you any justice for me to say this is what healing looks like. You know what your trauma is before I do. My job is to help you and guide you through it with the appropriate tools. So again, it does not own you, you own it. But healing looks different for every single person and whatever has caused them to be in the space that they're in. So I give my clients, I want to allow and provide this space where they can appreciate how they've been negatively impacted by what their past experiences are. And then we together, more them, of course, than me, again, me being the guy in this situation, define what healing looks like, what getting to the other side is. And then once we have defined what that is, we're going to take the steps to get there and then make sure that they're fortified in maintaining that space.
How do you support clients dealing with systemic oppression?
First is identifying with the oppression. Some clients, while it's something that's going on, they don't fully want to talk about it, discuss it. It's something that is essentially outside of them. It's that thing that's over there and they share the same space, but it's not part of what I necessarily have to deal with in a very intimate way. It's, well, let's own it. Again, you'll see that thing come up and hear me talk about it quite often, but this owning that this is the oppression I experience. Okay, what's the cause of it? Let's get behind the reasoning of it existing. Is it things from your past? Is it something that people have said? Or is it something that people are saying now? We got to get to the root of what's causing the oppression and see what ways we can do to work past that so it does not continue to exist and show up in a person's life. We want to, okay.
What I was just going to ask you is that would you normally, when you have some of the LGBTQ youth, are they feeling more oppressed? A lot of times when you first start your sessions with them.
The youth are themselves not feeling oppressed in terms of what their experiences are, because a lot of the youth that I work with as a therapist, their parents are affirming because their parents are bringing them in for therapy. What you see is for those who are oppressed, they're often in a household, a family dynamic where they don't feel like they are going to be affirmed, respected, accepted on any type of level. So there's some affirmation that is occurring generally with the youth that I'm seeing. It's not to say they're not experiencing some form of mental illness or anxiety or depression, but there's more affirmation generally within the family dynamic and household. It's what they're seeing on a societal level that tends to impact them. So what we're talking about now, again, we're going back to a Supreme Court that's questioning whether it should remain legal for the members of the LGBTQ community to be married. There's a question about, and there has been, and it comes up from time to time, about whether people in the LGBTQ community, specifically those who identify as transgender, should be allowed to be in the military. So that impacts them. It's, well, what is waiting for me once I finish with this part of my life, right? Once I finish with K through 12, maybe I get a little bit of more space in college, but what's waiting for me on the other side, and can I withstand that? That becomes the issue, because they're mindful. I mean, our youth are plugged in a way that previous generations are not. We think about phones and tablets. I mean, the accessibility of the news and what's going on in the world is something that they're very much aware of, more than previous generations. And that does unfortunately negatively impact them mentally a lot of times.
You know, but I want to ask you this because that question when you keep you when you mentioned the Supreme Court, and I've heard this like so many different times, and I'm actually following that situation because I'm trying to find out what's actually going to happen. But do you have an opinion on people in the LGBTQ community being married?
I think that we are all human beings, and what we decide we want to do should be up to us ultimately, and it should not be decided in a court of law or by a justice. I think that if I'm a human and my counterpart who identifies as heterosexual is human, that we should be afforded the same rights. So to not have it for a millennia, all the way up until 2015, have it for a decade, and then to say I want to strip it away.
Yeah.
And excuse my French, but it becomes damning for those of us in the community because you're saying that you're not good enough. It is a constant reminder that you are othered or you are a second-class citizen. You are not to be treated as everybody else. We'll use this term that I, from a professional standpoint, don't like to use, but you're not considered normal. There's something wrong with you, or you're not afforded the same types of rights as those who identify again as heterosexual, which is problematic to say the least.
So that in itself, that right there is what causes stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. Something I will share just as anecdotally in response to this, because clients often find themselves in a place of either anxiety and or depression as it relates to this type of news, is about the resilience that exists within our community. The manual that informs us of the current standards on mental illness and diagnosis is called the DSM for short. It's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And a fact that most people do not know is that up until about 1973, to identify as part of the LGBTQ community meant that you were being identified as having a mental illness. It was listed in the DSM. So essentially, society has always tried to find a way to say there is something wrong with you or you're other. Up until 1973, myself and anybody else that identified like me had a mental health illness, and that was not the case. It took all the way, and we're talking the past 50-ish years thereabout, where society made a change. There was also this period, it's called the Lavender Scare. It was either the 1940s or 1950s, one of those two decades, where there was a mass, not exodus, a mass firing of anybody that was perceived to be LGBTQ in the federal government. So the reason I'm sharing these is these are all these times that society tried to tell us that we are second-class citizens, you're not worthy of a certain role, you're not worthy of certain rights in terms of marrying as others. And this speaks to our resiliency because guess what? We're still here. Society tried to tell us there's something wrong with us, but through all of these ways and means that they tried to say that we are not allowed to or we're still here. We're still finding some way to thrive.
What's the biggest misconception about therapy in marginalized communities?
That, oh gosh. Oh, wow, this one. Okay. So it's a load of crap. It's not helpful. You should go and talk to your religious leaders. I mean, the list will go on and on and on. This is what is said in a lot of minority communities. You don't talk about your business out in the streets. A therapist, although we are ethically bound to make sure that what is said in the sessions stays with us. So it's all these different things that are said that are just not true. Like there is nothing that's said in this room with two exceptions. So the only time I can ever say anything, share anything outside of what's said in the session is if I feel you're going to harm yourself or somebody else. I have to let the appropriate authorities know. There is I can say anything related to what is shared with me in the session. In terms of the assistance that we provide, you can just look at the data. People in terms of mental illness experiencing not just anxiety, depression, suicidal ideations. We're talking about substance use. I mean, we're talking about everything that's listed as a mental illness. It is helped and it is getting better generally with therapy. So yes, while there are religious leaders who do have backgrounds in counseling, that is not generally, they don't have the educational background or the tools. Evidence-based tools is what we use in these spaces. And a lot of times religious leaders do not have access to that because they've not gone to school for it. So there's a lot of rhetoric when it comes to the work that I do and the broader mental health professional community does, and how it is viewed from the lens of the religious aspect or from minority communities. But for those who are willing and wanting to seek help and do something different, we're here. Those views, I don't honestly spend a whole lot of time just trying to invalidate those views. I spend more time on the people who are walking through the door saying, I know that this is helpful and I need it. That's where my energy goes to. Something I often remind clients of, and it's a good frame of mind to think of, is we all think of ourselves as having an imaginary battery in our back, right? And we have a certain amount of energy that we can expend every single day. And then we have to go to sleep. We got to recharge the battery, so to speak, right? I'm extremely intentional and mindful about how I use that battery. I'm not here to combat you and your views about the field that I have chosen to work in and how I want to help people. I'm here to use that energy to help people, because at the end of the day, I want to know I did my part for that day. I helped somebody or somebody's get to a better place, and that's what's important to me.
How do you stay grounded while holding space for others?
Very, very good question. So something we talk about in therapy is something that I do for myself, which is called self-care. I spend a good portion of my professional life dealing with the traumas and ills of society, things that most people are unable to withstand. And so to keep myself grounded, it's important that I take time to myself, doing things that I enjoy. I'm a person that likes to go and run. I'm a person that likes to go to the golfing range and just hit some balls. I will sit and I just listen to music. So it's different for every single person, but I take time to myself. Spending time with my social supports, another clinical mental health term, but just spending time with my friends and my family members, that helps pour back into me and keep me grounded as well. And I also have my own therapist. Something that we don't talk about enough is that because of all that we withstand as mental health professionals and the people that we see, it's also helpful for us to have our own therapists and mental health professionals. So I see my therapist quite regularly as well.
I'm sorry, but I used to think I wanted to go into that field because I found it really interesting and intriguing, and I just found myself in my day to day and just listening and understanding, situations just on a different perspective of where you guys are. But I'm just like, that's just too much. I just couldn't do it. And I'm like, there's no way I could. It's got to be hard to survive after doing that. But when you're good, and I guess maybe in learning to do, as you say, what you do with your therapist, that it's one of those things that help you with the outlet to alleviate that and to relieve it somehow, I guess. I don't know.
It's a difficult role to take on, and it's definitely not something that a lot of people can do. But going back to a question that you asked me earlier, that's in terms of a response or a different response, that's super helpful in describing why I do this work, is how do you know that you've made impact, or that you've connected with a client, or you've had some aha moment with them? When a client can reveal something in session that was traumatic that they haven't told anybody that they've been dealing with since they were in childhood. So we're talking about, and these are very difficult and very heavy subject matters. So we're talking about sexual assault, we're talking about verbal abuse, we're talking about physical abuse. And these are things that a lot of clients have never talked about. We're talking people in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s have not talked about it. And the fact that they have found a space where they can, and not just talk about it, but want to do work around it. That is amazing. Is the work heavy? Yes. But what I get to lay my head down on, or put my hat up on, as the phrasing goes, is that they were able to talk about it. And I was able to provide, I call it curating a space for them where they felt they were the comfort enough to be able to speak on something that had been holding them back. Right? They feel more empowered to be able to do that, which is super helpful and why I do the work that I do. That's why I call myself just a helper. I'm helping them, a guide on the way. And the fact that somebody after so many years and decades can feel comfortable enough to want to talk about this and do something about it is just so impactful and meaningful in the work that I do.
Let's transition over to your voice and visibility. What topics do you most enjoy speaking about publicly?
The significance of mental health. It transcends just being a member of the community and seeing members of the community, because while I do, a good portion of my clients are part of the LGBTQ community, I see people from all walks of life. There is absolutely nobody that's turned away that seeks me out. And that's just super, super important. So talking about the significance of mental health and the tools that I developed, unfortunately, a lot of the tools that I was taught via my educational experience are a bit antiquated. They're from a different time period, and they don't take into consideration what it is for people with varying backgrounds, including just different ethnic backgrounds, so to speak. So I have different tools that I, as a therapist and as being in this business for 4.5 years, and I don't know, work with probably well over 150 clients, somewhere around there. I've developed these specific tools that are helpful, and I don't hoard. I get information, and I come up with these different tools to share them to help people. Again, we go back to this word of help. So me being able to do that, I absolutely enjoy it. So going out and talking about the significance of mental health, and here's different tools that you can use to help improve your mental health just on a daily basis. Sometimes it doesn't require going to a therapist, or sometimes you don't have the ability to. We forget that we still live in a society where mental health is not, health overall or health insurance is not afforded by all. So by going out and speaking in places such as this, I'm able to provide at least some assistance to those who don't have access to healthcare or healthcare insurance right now.
That's a perfect transition for this question here, though, because that makes so much sense. But can you tell us, how do you prepare for national presentations on mental health and inclusion?
Mm. Depends on the audience I'm speaking in front of. So I, and this is a bit more the public relations side of me because I went to school and had that degree first, but you tailor a message for the audience. You don't just have a broad message and say, this is my message. I can, and there may be some themes that I want to make sure I consistently discuss or highlight in my presentations, but I want to take into consideration who am I talking to, whether it's a certain group of professionals, whether it's parents, whether it's youth. I have talked across such a broad spectrum or variance rather of populations, and I tailor my message so that it makes sense to those who I am speaking in front of, even down to the words that I'm using in the verbiage, if you will. Talking to a group of high schoolers is vastly different than talking to a group of professionals in their 20s or 30s or 40s. So it's tailoring the message. I talk about the mental health concepts and the tools that I use, but I want to make sure it's easily digestible for the audience that I'm in front of.
Okay. What's one audience reaction that stayed with you?
Speaking in front of parents and them connecting with experiences that I've shared with them from youth. So I've had a parent come and approach me after I've spoken and said to me, Jordan, you don't know how much, one, this has helped me, two, that I've followed you because I list or have different speaking engagements up on my LinkedIn page. So what you've shared with me has been super helpful. What you've shared today has been super impactful. So knowing that I've helped the parents, because they can be the differentiator of a child and their anxiety and depressive symptoms. They're the ones who spend the most time with their child outside of school. So for me to be able to speak to parents and to share these tools and to say like this is helpful and be approached in that manner, I mean, it there's no other way to say it. It just warms my heart, and it further affirms that, going back to what I said earlier in our session, that I was here or I was spared for a purpose. So it just goes back to that. And maybe this is it. I can never know for certainty that this is necessarily it in the moment, but it just lends itself to that. Like maybe this is it. Maybe this is the defining moment that says this is why you were spared.
How do you use storytelling to connect with diverse audiences?
Oh, I love storytelling. I love storytelling. I go so far as to, well, in sessions and sometimes even in front of audience, I will revert to let's go with imagery because people are very visual. So talking through a scenario and using images is what helps them connect. Who wants to, I mean, we think about K through 12, or for some of us who've gone to college as well, we know what it's like to sit in the classroom and somebody just sucks all the air out of it because they're just sitting there and they're just yapping away. And if I am being completely honest, that is not what I want to do in front of anybody. I didn't even envision that this would be something I would be doing in my life. So for me to do it, I want to do it in a way that makes sense and makes the biggest impact. And that is creating, like, doing the storytelling and doing it with the images and involving the audience as well. Whoever I'm speaking with, I want you to be part of this. I'm gonna call on people at different points and just ask them questions or say, what do you feel about this? Or have you experienced this? So integrating people into the storytelling and the speaking, having images, all of that helps the audience, whoever that may be, connect with whatever it is that we're discussing.
So, what advice would you give to aspiring public speakers in advocacy work?
Know your audience. That's always going to be number one. Know your audience and tailor your message. And remember your why. You're doing this for a reason. So I do this to help further connect with individuals as is related to mental health, as previously stated. So that's my why. I can find it difficult at times to publicly speak because it wasn't something I saw myself doing. I'm a therapist and I deal with anxiety as well. So speaking in front of groups sometimes does trigger my anxiety, but remembering my why and the impact I'm going to make, that is super, super helpful. So tailoring your message, knowing who your audience is, and remembering your why is just super helpful in the work that you're doing. Do we fumble? Do we stumble as public speakers? Absolutely. Do I do it? Absolutely. But it's not about the stumbling, it's how you recover. That's also something else that's just really important in this work.
How do you balance vulnerability and professionalism on stage?
Mm. There's always a line, and this is where I go all the way up to, but my life in its entirety is not up for public consumption. So that is something that's super important, and I'm very familiar with what that line is. I live in a world of and something I will just go ahead and let out to the audience here is some way that I like to unwind is actually reality TV. And how I look at the people who exist in that world is oftentimes they're giving up so much of their life. And I love it and I watch it, but I find that they don't oftentimes, and this is just an opinion of mine, they don't reserve enough for themselves. I will give as much as I can, but I have to reserve some things for myself, my close friends, my therapist. That's and I define what that line is. So no need to go into specifics, but there are certain things that are just completely off limits. Other things I'm willing to discuss and share with the audience because it helps with connecting. People want to feel like there's a human being talking to them on stage, not just a human being that they can connect with, that they understand. It's, oh, wow, okay, they can really relate to me. So if you don't share about yourself, then you're at risk of not having a connection with the audience and then walking out with nothing after an hour or longer. So you want to make sure that you're able to share, but just know what your line is and be very clear about that with yourself so that you're not overstepping that, because that can create discomfort for you. And that's not the goal of what we do as public speaking. We want to share, we want to give people the knowledge, but we don't want to do it at risk of ourselves.
Now, when it comes to the LGBTQ what's your message to the ones that feel unseen?
Some of them want to remain unseen because of fear and safety. So that has to be acknowledged and something I have to call out first. In the world that we live in, there are still some very unsafe environments, whether it be in the household, whether it be in the broader community in which they exist and live, whether that community exists, is inclusive of their school or the broader extended family. So for some, they want to be unseen, and that's absolutely okay. For those that want to be seen, it's a question of what's holding you back. Let's dive into that. Let's figure out what that is. Is it that you are holding yourself back from being seen for fear of what people might say, or for not feeling like you'll be accepted, which is honestly very common regardless of how you identify. But let's determine what it is that has you feeling like you are unseen and you're unable to be seen. And then from there, determine how can we put you closer to the front of the stage. Doesn't mean that you need to be the front center of it, but not necessarily in the back as well. Like, how do we find a way, if we know that this is the reason for why you're being unseen, or as the way I like to think about it, you want to be put in the back of the choir? How do we at least get you to the front of the alto section? Doesn't mean that you're going to be the soloist, but how do we get you to the front of the alto section, right? Because they're generally going to be like right there behind the soloist. So what's the work that we need to do to get there?
So that are watching the show right now and they're just familiarizing themselves with you, what is a message from you to those youth that are part of the LGBTQ plus community that need some therapy, or they need some healing of some sort, something that's going to be thought provocative for them? What can you say to them?
As it relates to just the space that I create, now go back to, and this is why I was very intentional in terms of the naming of the nonprofit. It's called Safe Space Nova. Nova is short for Northern Virginia, which is where we're based, and we serve all of Northern Virginia. I wanted to create a safe space, and that's what I did. And my staff and the board members, that's what we all collectively come together and do. Becoming a therapist is an extension of that. That's why I sit, and this is something I was extremely also intentional about, but this is a flag that I made sure was framed. And then when people are seeing me virtually, they can see that, no, this is an affirming space. So know that this is an affirming space and it's a safe space. I often say wherever I am is a safe space. So if you're looking for therapy, find that safe space for you. Doesn't mean it's necessarily got to be me. There are other people that do this work, but find a safe space for you. It exists. It's just about finding it. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult if you're in an unsafe environment. But if you are in a safe environment, meaning that you have people in your community that are affirming, you can look to them and ask them for support and assistance in finding what is a safe space so that you can express what it is that you're finding emotionally difficult or heavy to deal with.
How do you amplify underrepresented voices through your platform?
With permission, I share their stories. It's just simply that. So there are plenty of people who are not confident or extremely just uncomfortable sharing their stories, but they're stories of significance. So I just ask, are you okay with me sharing your story? It doesn't mean it's going to come, like, there's not going to be names involved, but if I can share just a little bit more in terms of details about just the scenario itself, not the individual, but the scenario, that's one way I do that as an advocate. Is I haven't lived every experience. I've only lived Jordan Costen's experience as, a therapist who started the nonprofit and did the IT. I wouldn't know about your experience, and I can amplify that by bringing that to others if you're not comfortable doing so. So taking others' experiences and bringing those to a broader audience when I am doing these speaking engagements, that's super helpful.
So, what role does visibility play in healing?
Visibility is feeling seen. And that's important because a person who's unseen doesn't want to work on their trauma or the issues that have brought them to that point. So healing is validating, or validation rather, for a person. We want a person to feel like they're valid, because if you feel invalidated and you've historically felt invalidated, it's as if, in having such a low sense of self-worth, that whatever you're experiencing, you should be experiencing. There's no other way that you should exist in the world but to live under this type of emotional distress. And this space that's curated for you, as in the space in which I work as a therapist, is to say, no, here in this space, you are visible, you are valid, and your trauma and your experiences, your harmful experiences, it doesn't have to even be traumatic, but the harmful experiences you have, they carry weight. And you are worthy of having those discussed. You are worthy of getting to a better place and feeling empowered, and not letting them be the proverbial ball and chain that holds you back or holds you down from achieving what are the highest goals that you want to set for yourself.
So, how do you use social media to extend your advocacy?
Another good question, Charles. I use the platforms at my disposal to share, just like I'm doing right now. So I share positive affirmation. So I created this image of myself, if you will, of the affirmative guy. So even has its own little logo, looks kind of like me, glasses, and outside of sweatshirts, I typically wear sweaters and a button-down shirt, and it looks very much like me, and it says the affirmative guy. But with that, I just share affirmative messages, and that's something that I can't tell you countless times. So talking about weathering a storm, it can't be stormy all the time. It's going to be a rainbow on the other side. remind yourself of that as best you can. Something as simple as an antidote is something I just share, or I just ask people like, you know what, how is your day going today? I hope it's a little bit lighter if it was heavier recently. So sharing those type of messages with the platform that I have is extremely helpful, and sharing that across the different social media pages and platforms that I have. So I'm very intentional about doing that. I don't do it on a I do it on a like consistent basis, meaning that you see it, but it's not regimented. It's not a here we are every Friday at 3 o'clock. It's more so, every couple of days or so, you're gonna just see a positive message and following it. Because it's not meant to be this, it's hard and fast every single set period. It is an unexpected, here you go, on when you're on your LinkedIn or the Instagram. And if you happen to be connected with me, it's a out of the blue, here you go. Here's a positive message. And I can't tell you again how many times people have messaged back and said, I didn't know I needed this, but it was right on time.
Wow. Let's move over to your community and change. Can you tell us what does your work with the One Fairfax Community Roundtable involve?
Equity Work is the first community board for the Fairfax County that was created with the idea of what does equality and equity work look like across an entire jurisdiction. Fairfax County is one of the largest. Can't recall, fortunately, this month if it's the largest county. I think it is by landmass as well as by population. If not, it's probably the second. So to have that big of a landmass and have such a diverse pool in terms of population, they wanted to pull together a commission of all these different varying voices and experiences of people and say, how do we create an equity plan, and then how do we implement that across an entire county? So I represented the LGBTQ community, and the work that I do with Safe Space Nova is how the reason they reached out to me, and we're just talking about what are the ways that we can make sure that the services even being provided are equitable across all the different populations, vulnerable or not, across Fairfax County. It's just one example. So them reaching out and saying, like, we want to make sure there's representation from the LGBTQ community, I make sure I took that and ran with it as quickly as I could to make sure that our voices were there at the table.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, because Fairfax County is very large. That I do know.
Yes. Very diverse. Is a very extremely diverse county.
Yeah. I actually ventured over to Fairfax County a few times when I lived in DC.
Okay.
So I know how broad it is, but yeah, it's definitely far-reaching.
Very much so.
How do you approach equity work at the local level?
I have, up until recently, I've taken a little bit of a step back just so I could focus a bit more on therapy. And I also do the work at Safe Space Nova. But I sat on commissions. The most notable one that just comes to mind is the Human Rights Commission. So we act as the front-facing group agency, I guess it's the best way to describe it. Maybe it's like we were part of the agency that says, okay, there's an egregious act that would be considered to be a violation of what are equality policies that are set forth by a specific jurisdiction. So I was on that board, again, as a member of the community, to say, okay, this is something egregious we need to address, or maybe we not only need to address what is a specific incident, but we also need to maybe look at changes in policy and other places as well. So more broadly speaking, on a local level, making sure that I'm meeting with my community partners and we're having open conversations about what equity looks like in an ever-changing world. So that's really important, not just from my perspective and not just from my community's perspective, but others as well. I always want to come to the table and make sure that everybody's being heard and we're on the same page. And if we're not, let's make sure we are about what are the equitable policies that need to be put in place. And again, in the ever-changing world that we exist in.
What's one policy change you're proud to have influenced?
This is a very, very, well, I'm not going to call it simple. It's actually a very big deal, which was in the city of Alexandria. Safe Space Nova, the board of directors, and others contributed to us getting the rainbow colors painted on the street. So the significance of that in the city was just quite wonderful because there's been opposition about that in so many different cities across the United States of America. And for the city of Alexandria to say, we are with you. We advocated for this. This is something that we want. And it took a bit of time to get there, but to see that, what that instills again is more empowerment for our community, whether it's the youth, whether it's the adults, to say like, and it's not in a side street. It's not somewhere where you won't happen upon it. It's actually right in front of City Hall. So it's at what is the building of government work when it comes to the services provided by the city of Alexandria. So to see that and to say myself, and not just myself, of course, countless others, people on our board and our operations team contributed to making sure that we're visible. That's what that essentially says, that our community is visible and acknowledged by this city by having the rainbow sidewalk color. So it's quite lovely and beautiful, and I'm so proud to have been a part of that.
I am shocked to hear that. I am shocked, but I'm also proud of you and your group though, because that advocacy really means that much. Because when the community has got some people, I've got a group that's there for them like that, to actually go out and get something like this accomplished. It may look small to some, but that's a large thing,
It is.
because every time you go down that street, you're gonna see that. You're gonna see that, and that's pride.
It goes back to being seen. We are seen, we are here, we are acknowledged by our community, by the local community, by the government officials. So that's saying that they acknowledge us, they are here with us. Essentially, it's another way of saying we stand beside you.
Yes. How do you build trust with communities historically excluded from mental health care?
As best I can, finding out what has built the distrust and then try to dispel it. So there's some type of reason, some logical, some illogical, but or rational or irrational. But let's find out what the reasons are, and then let's try to dispel those, because oftentimes they can be dispelled. If you are a believer of science, if you're a believer of data, that exists, and I can show that to you. I can bring you personal experiences, of course, with the permission of former or current clients. I can bring you the experiences. So I have a plethora of resources that I can rely upon if a person is willing and open to hear them.
So, what partnerships have helped expand Safe Space Nova's impact?
Oh gosh. So in the almost 10 years that our organization has existed, we've partnered with, off the top of my head, without having members of the team here, over conservatively maybe 40 to 50 organizations. So different other nonprofits, other agencies, other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. So we've partnered with all the counties, so Prince William County, Loudoun County, Fairfax County, City of Alexandria, Arlington. We partner with them in some way. So we have a tremendous amount of support through our partnerships, and that increases our visibility, for one, right? So if we partner with other people, they're bringing attention to the work that we're doing, and we're doing the same with them. It's very reciprocal work. So that just makes sure that there are more eyeballs and more knowledge sharing about the work that we as organizations are doing, and that helps us with just making sure that more people know what we're offering for the youth.
How do you measure success in community engagement?
Success is impact. So seeing where a community is in terms of maybe they're not receiving, and this is more the social work side of me, but let's assess the community and where it's at and find out the metrics that we want to use to determine if we are having successes. So an example may be in a community where you're finding that there are more children in this who are ending up in the penal system, as an example, and then having to do some research to say what generally happens. Well, one thing is, or one issue often can be, oh my gosh, there's not enough summer programs offered for students. And so, okay, if we find out that this amount of students are going in and they're ending up in, unfortunately, the prison system or juvenile detention center, rather, it's okay. And we know that one of the reasons why is because when they get out and it's the summer and there's not summer jobs offered. Okay, well, let's let's build in resources and whatever we need to do to make sure that there are summer jobs that are available. And then we have the metrics of how many students are being detained. And if we see that there is a decrease, we can make that correlation along with just asking the students point blank. You also want to have connectivity, an open engagement with the communities that you're serving. So let's have an open dialogue. We have to include our communities. We don't operate in a vacuum. It's okay, what do you believe the issue is? Let's also invite you into this as well when it comes to our program development. So making sure we're involved in the community, see what they have as issues, trying to also identify other issues via other ways as well. And then finding those metrics and then putting in some programming that says, okay, this is what we're doing to combat it. And let's see 6 months, a year, where we stand in relation to where we were the metrics at the very beginning of this program versus midway or at the end of the program itself.
So with the programs that you guys normally implement are the ones that you work on. Can you tell us how much of this is just your group, your board, however that's established, the local county government agencies and the people? How does that work to get the right people in the room? What does that look like? What does that make up?
The simplest word I can use is just communication. So we tell and send out, we have an outreach coordinator, and what that person is responsible for doing from a nonprofit standpoint is saying consistently and constantly saying to different community partners that we're here. So that's on the government level, that's local agencies, that is other nonprofits, that's other businesses in the area, and let them know that we're here and we're communicating. And with that comes this, okay, now that we know that they know that we exist and these are the programs, that they then disseminate that information to whoever they have a reach, the communities that they have a reach into, because we can't reach everybody on our own. We are an organization, as I often describe it, we're a hair above grassroots. So we have a small team. We're very mighty. We're lean, but we're mighty. And so we depend on our partners to let others know that we exist and get people in the room. And here's our information. We also find we let everybody know that there is a number or plethora of ways they can get in contact with us, whether they're calling us, whether they're going to email us, whether they want to come through our different social media platforms, because we have a number of them available. So finding a way to communicate with us so we can get the right people to our programs. Our programs specifically are geared towards, so we serve 14 to 18-year-olds, LGBTQ youth, and we have, so just to give a quick rundown of the programs, we have inclusive sex education. So we talk about everything from what is a healthy relationship to contraception, and we want to make sure that teens and youth are prepared to have healthy, physical, intimate relationships with others. So we have that. And then we have our social activities or social support groups. They're interchangeable in terms of the terminology that we tend to use, but we invite the youth to spaces where we say, this is where you get to come and be your authentic selves. So we have supervision for the youth, but we'll run out of space and just come and have fun. We've done miniature monster golf, we've done top golf, we've done laser tag, we've done a plethora, we did a Marvel movie night. I mean, the list kind of goes on from there, but we just do different events where we say, just come and be your authentic selves. Our biggest event that we host, and we've done this for a number of years now, is an LGBTQ prom. We do that every single year during Pride Month. We run out of space. We have a DJ. We have a drag performer, a drag queen performer, a drag king performer. We have the food. We have a quiet room for our students that are neurodivergent. We also invite in our community partners so they can let the youth know what other programs that they have that the youth might find useful for them. So that's our biggest event. It takes the biggest chunk of our resources, but we are so elated and happy to see the youth doing it. And it tends to bring in a big audience. We historically have anywhere between 150 up to maybe 300 people that come and attend.
So what's your vision for mental health equity in the next decade?
That people have more access. That's part of the issue that we are constantly contending with. More people have access now than they did even 10 years ago, but everybody doesn't have access. So the more people that have access to quality healthcare includes more people who have access to quality mental health. So I want to see more people having access. There are still a number of people who've reached out to me and they want to be in treatment, and that's the terminology we use when they're coming to see us as therapists and in sessions, but they just don't have the insurance or the resources to be able to take that on. So knowing that people have more means they have people have more time and get the treatment that they need.
How do you mentor emerging leaders in advocacy and therapy?
Advocacy is important if you know what it is that you want to speak on, what you're passionate about. So just knowing that you want to be the advocate is super, super helpful, but not knowing what you want to be an advocate about or on behalf of doesn't help you as much. And we have a lot of vocal youth. When I tell you a lot, I've always known that I wanted to help the LGBTQ community as a whole, but I did not know I would be an advocate. So it worked in reverse. It's okay, you might as well be an advocate because you're doing this type of work. But I have a lot of youth that we work with or part of our program is like, I want to advocate. Well, what specifically you want to advocate about? So I advocate about myself as well as how the significance across all communities, as well as advocate for the LGBTQ community. So finding out what it is that they want to advocate about, and then finding avenues for them to do so. There are avenues that the youth or high schoolers, rather those of high school age, can use to help prepare them for future advocacy.
What does community healing look like to you?
Appreciating the experience of the most vulnerable. So appreciating, understanding the experience of the most vulnerable in your community versus ignoring it, pretending it doesn't exist, not acknowledging it in any of those forms that were just mentioned. So it's, the community, we are only doing our best when our most vulnerable are thriving. That's a way to always think about it. Because if I go to a community and say, okay, well, show me or tell me about your most vulnerable, and they either don't know or they do know, but they've been in the same place for a period of time, then that's not really, they haven't seen as much improvement as you should. And you're not thriving as a community because look at your most vulnerable population. So as a community, tell me about your most vulnerable population and what you're doing to help them and get to a better place.
So how are they doing? How are they doing in the county when it comes to the LGBTQ community in general? How are they doing?
The local officials are doing excellent. We're in contact with all of our local officials. So we service, again, the 5 jurisdictions, 4 counties in 1 city, but 5 jurisdictions in totality across Northern Virginia. And we're in contact with our city officials all the time. The roles kind of differentiate, so it takes me a moment to remember. So it's city council for the city of Alexandria. It's board of directors for the surrounding counties. So, and we're in contact with all of them. They're always wanting to know about the work that we're doing and how they can further promote the work. I love that we have this. I love that we have people at the highest echelon of our government in these local areas that see the significance of the work that we're doing at Safe Space Nova and want to further promote it and make sure that we have the resources we need to continue to thrive and provide our programming.
Oh, wow. That is excellent. How do you stay connected to the people you serve?
I'm never too far from them. I always want to be in arm's reach. So I'm never in a role or position where I am inaccessible. Any youth that wants to get in contact with me, any person as relates to the work that we're doing, my email, my phone number, you need it, give me a call, let's talk. So I always want to be accessible, and I am. And I talk to our community members, I talk to our youth. There is no aspect of the work that I'm doing and the people in which I'm intensely attempting to change or affect that I'm not in some form of communication with on a fairly regular basis.
So when we also chatted, I discussed with you that we do Black History 365. And I asked you who was the most influential person in your life and career, and you mentioned Bayard Rustin. Can you tell us why is Bayard Rustin the most influential figure in your life and career?
A gay Black man can do it is the short and the sweet of it. He's not mentioned in the history books for the significant role that he played in civil rights. And to be a young Black queer boy, to not know about that, growing up in the South myself and being very familiar with Black history, but not being told about that till I was an adult, hearing about his story is disheartening to say the least. But the impact that it has is that this Black queer boy can do anything he sets his mind to, just as he did. So that's the significance. It's the only person that limits you is you, and he stands as a testament to that in terms of the life that he lived and the impact that he made.
That he did. That he did. What aspects of Rustin's leadership resonate most with your mission?
He was known for not backing down unless absolutely necessary, but yeah, some scenarios he did, but he's very passionate about his work. And that is what I carry with me. It's like a torch that I carry. It's right here, symbolically. And so that passion is what carries me through. I can't tell you how many late nights I've had after getting off my job, working again as an IT account manager, getting out 5, 6, maybe even 7 o'clock. And I would go home, maybe eat a little bit of dinner, and then I'm gonna open up this laptop and I'm gonna get some work done. I need to communicate with some community partners. I need to make sure we're set up for the next program. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do because I'm passionate about this work that I do. I live it and I breathe it because I know it's important and it's so significant in the world that we live in.
How do you honor Rustin's legacy through your work?
Keep moving forward. He did. So just keep moving forward with the work that we're doing. Like I'm not looking, and I never have, for one, I don't need to be the forefront of everything. So that's not what it's important to me. It's about the work that we do, and it continues. There are moments when, because of what's happened in the world or government or what they have available to them, because we've gotten grants, that some of that either gets taken away or it's no longer available to us. And there are honest conversations we have to have as an organization is, can we continue this and all the work that we're doing? Can we continue this portion of the work that we're doing? But I just continue to move forward and know that we will find a way, and we always do. And we persevere, which is something I associate with Barrett Rustin.
What does Black history mean to you personally?
Pride in who I am. I am a proud Black man in society, and to have history reflect that with these role models from the past is so significant. Black history is just pride for me. I wear this skin color just like I sit my underneath these colors, which is symbolic of the LGBTQ community, and pride that they feel. I wear this skin and this tone as a pride of who I am, my ancestors, several generations of hardworking people, and all that they strive for. I'm borrowing a more recently used terminology, but I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, and I continue and move forward with that as best I can.
I gotta tell you, you more than represent the community. You more than represent the community. Your work is indignant of that, and I'm more than sure that as time goes on, you're only going to become that much more favorable, that much more expanded, where people are going to get to know Jordan L. Costen. I can tell you that. I can tell you that without a doubt.
I'm here for it.
How do you hope your work contributes to the broader legacy of Black resilience and advocacy?
I just want to continue to uphold that we can do whatever we set our minds to, just as a people in general, because we are part of a society that told us that we had no voice and that we were worthless as a people. So the work that I do further dispels that every single day, that I feel like I get up and I do whatever aspect of my life is that day, seeing clients, doing the safe space noble work. So we can do anything. I go back to, we can do anything that we set our minds to. We only limit ourselves. And it's not lost on me that I have had some privilege, and I do come from privilege in terms of having parents that were educated and grandparents that were educated. But what's important to me is that I use that as a tool to help others. So allyship is, is important to know in allyship. What's important is knowing what your privilege is, how you can use it to help others. And that's what I exude every single day, knowing that I'm a Black educated man and wanting to do what I can to help others within our community.
So, in closing, uh, if you have some words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience, also give them another small synopsis of who Jordan is, how they can connect with you on your social and your website, if you'd like to give that information.
Sure. I am so just talking about who I am, which is not something I will say that honestly I don't do too often, but I am love, I am support, I am light. Those are three words that best describe who I am and how I move in the world. And I hope, and I cannot say the word enough, that people can see that light and they come towards it. And even if it's not just my light, that you find the light that is going to best help you as a therapist, as an advocate, as nonprofit person, guy. I just want to be the light for people. And even if I'm not the right light for you, to help you find light in this world. So know that it does exist. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work to find that light that's going to help you get out of the darkness. But if you look hard enough, you're going to find it. Sometimes it's right there and it's easy to find. Sometimes it takes a little bit more work. So just believe in that. I am a testament to, if you want something, go after it. As I've expressed, I mean, I think a couple of times over at this point, I've had varying different experiences through life, and I could have stopped there and said, this is enough for me. I could have said, okay, I went and have a bachelor's degree. As a Black man in society, there's still a small percentage of us that even have that. I went and got a master's degree. Okay, great. That's enough. I got a second master's because I wanted to do this work. And I could have said, no, that's too much education. It was a very fleeting thought, but I said, the impact I want to make is just too important. And if this is what it takes to get there, because to be a social worker requires formal education, this is the work it takes to get there. And I'm going to do it. Me, as a guy who had communications degrees and worked only in IT account management, I found a way. So if I can do it, anybody else can. Don't tell yourself no. Don't sell yourself short, regardless of where you are in life, what you're dealing with, your age, no circumstance. If you really want it, go after it. If you're wanting to get some therapy or seek assistance, so there's a couple of different ways that you get in contact with me. One is you can just, if you see my name, if you actually put in the search engine, you'll find these pages. But on LinkedIn is a good way to connect with me there. And another is if you're looking for therapy, and it doesn't just have to be with me. I do know other therapists in the area who do the same work that I do. So you can look me up, and there's Psychology Today. So www.psychologytoday.com. Jordan Costen is another way to get in contact with me and to see what I offer as a therapist. It gives you more insight and clarity into the space that I curate and the work that I do in the communities in which I work. So there's that as well. And then you can just search Affirmative Guy on Instagram. That's another way to find me as well. So those are the significant ways that you can get in contact with me.
Before I go and finish out, there's a comment here in the chat here from Dr. Whitty. Let me show it on the screen. Says great interview, guys. Jordan, you're one of the best. It's right there on the screen, right there.
Thank you, Dr. Whitty.
At any rate, um, I want to thank you, Jordan, for doing this interview with us. And we definitely got to have you back because the representation is more than just important, but it's also about the community. And your mission is one that is also the same similar mission to what we have here at American Black and White, and it's about community building. And when we have guests that are all the way rolled in, hey, which I think everybody has been, I want to thank you because, there's a lot that goes into that, which a lot of people don't know that don't do the work. But I think it's when they see the results, it's when they feel the relief. They also feel like they can relax a little bit because they know that there are some people that are out there that recognize that there's a shortfall and they need that help. It's people like you that we want to continue to make sure people get to know a whole lot more about as we amplify the work that you do. I want to thank each and every individual that's watching on any of the 8 channels that we broadcast on, including the YouTube channel. If you guys have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications to those channels, I would ask if you would please support us by doing that. We would definitely appreciate that. Also, I'd like to tell you guys that you now can, if you have not yet, please visit our site, AmericanBlackandWhite.us, where it's another place where you are able to watch the show if you so decide to. Also, you can check out our blog. You'll be able to check out all of you can check out our resource page, especially if you are a business that's looking to advertise, because you can advertise on that page. Also, if you like, there's a feed where you get the latest and greatest when it comes to news and sports, as well as you get to tap into other parts of our social media. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Please join us again tomorrow night for another episode of American Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on the canvas of America. Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate you so much, and I'll definitely